Hi guys, it's Kelly here. It's been a minute since I made this card. I had originally intended on putting the video up earlier. Well, I should say cards, but here we are, a couple weeks later. So I'm going to be using some 3D embossing folders as well as some stamps and dies to review these Artistry by Altenew Acrylic Markers. This is their 24 color set volume 1, which I would assume means that we will see more of colors to come. So I swatched them all out on white. You can see them here. I am going to show you them swatched out on black. Because I think that's kind of really where they shine. So the case is super nice. They all stay in there together. You have those two little plastic pieces, that clip in, and then the whole case closes up on itself so that they're secure. You don't have to find any storage for them. They basically come with their own storage, which is great. These, I did not have to pump them, prime them, anything. They were ready to use right out of the case, which I totally appreciate. And they are pretty opaque. Like they're here, I'm just like, I should probably zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And so you can see even the paler colors. That first color right there is pink pearl. They show up really nicely on white as well as black, which is the benefit of using a kind of paint style marker, acrylic marker. So for my cards today, I will be doing all of my projects on black because if you watch my videos, you know that I love cards that kind of bring the drama. And these were, we're 2 minutes in and I'm just going to tell you, these were fantastic. I loved them. There are some things that you do need to be aware of when using this medium, but at the end of the day, I was thrilled with the way that they worked right out of the, right out of the box without having to do any work to get them there. I've worked with paint markers in the past where you kind of have to pump them, prime them, and then sometimes you end up with a pool of ink. Not a big fan of that. These did not require it at all. And you can make them more solid by doing a second layer. That is one of the things that you do need to be aware of. If you're going to do a second layer, you have to make sure your first layer is completely dry. This does not take very long for them to completely dry down. But there you can see on white, on black, how they look. Obviously, you can't see the black marker on the black, and you can't see the white marker on the white, but nonetheless. So the first thing that I wanted to try this with, because obviously this is great, for artists who are working on canvas or things like that, which I do believe is why they made it part of the Artistry by Altenew line. But I'm a card maker, and that's the art that I make. So I wanted to make sure that these were going to be something that I could use with the things that I own. So in order to get the outline of my images, this is kind of like no line coloring, but you can start with a line because your medium is completely opaque and you're not going to be able to see the line by the time it's over, which is great. So these are the striking flowers, striking florals. I think it's striking florals. And I just stamped out a bunch of these. This is regular black cardstock. This isn't watercolor cardstock or anything like that. This is just regular black cardstock. I did have just a smidge, and this is my own fault. It's for being lazy and try to stamp too many things at one time. So I did have just a little bit of a corner down there that I kept having to try to re-stamp, and eventually I did get it, but it's because I had too many items on the Misty door. So now I stamped in their Cloud White pigment ink, and once it is dry, which again, did not take very long. You could also use a heat tool to kind of go along. I approached this two different ways, and I'm going to show you both of them. So the first way I approached it was to fill in the petals and just kind of work around the stamen. I didn't want to lose the stamen altogether. I'm relatively confident in my ability to put stamen back into the flowers, but I know not everybody is. So I really wanted to try to preserve the image the way that it was, as well as kind of tackle it from all levels of creators. So the first way that I did it was I just went around all of the stamen and then filled in the rest of the petal. That did work. Now here you can see I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do a second layer. This is the first petal that I started with, so it is dry by the time I'm done, getting through all of my other petals. And, you can see the color is just becoming more opaque. That's all. And again, this did work. The way that I found that I actually preferred to do the coloring was not this way, because these lines are simple, and so it's easy to see where the stamen should go. Here I'm going in with my yellow marker and just going over those stamen, kind of putting them back in. For the next flower, I'm actually going to do the stamen first, and then I'm going to color around those. Now, because these markers are opaque, yes, I can put my purple over my yellow or my yellow over my purple, and that is something that I do need to be aware of. But I found it much easier to know where the stamen was or where I needed to add the purple versus add the yellow by having the yellow already down there. And this is kind of similar to like when I'm doing no line coloring with any other medium with like Copic markers, where I go in and put down, like I don't want to lose my lines, so I go down and put my lines in first so I don't lose them. Now this is them side by side. Flower on the left is one layer, flower on the right is two layers. Me personally, I actually found that I liked the flower on the left better. I liked it a little bit more transparent. And then from here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add shading like I normally do. So the lightest color I was using was, what was it? I think it's Lavender Fields. And then I'm adding the shadows with Deep Iris. And then my highlight color is going to be Wisteria. And so here is that highlight color. You can see that the mid-tone is maybe a bit more on the pink side than the shadows or the highlight color. But that was actually fine with me. So here's one of the things that we need, we need to be aware of, how we lay the color down. The other one of the things that you need to be aware of is you will not, I mean, maybe you could, I guess, maybe if you had a bunch of layers, but for the most part in this is not going to be a perfectly blended look. This isn't going to be a seamless look like a Copic marker or a colored pencil. This is going to be more of a streaky look where you're going to be able to see the lines. So something more similar to painting where you'll be able to see the brush strokes. That didn't bother me. Actually it was a different look, maybe more of a graphic style, and I found it to be quite enjoyable, but just something to know about this particular medium. For the greens, I am using the Minty Mint as my highlight and the Pine Green as my darkest color. The middle of the road one is the Sweet Green. So I found that I liked putting in, conserving the lines to begin with. So that's what I started with. For this larger flower, I wanted to do some of the stripes white. I really wanted to see how the white would react, on the black paper and how solid it was going to be. It did great. It performed wonderfully. I've since used this white marker as accents on other projects. And it's a really great way to go back in and kind of add white highlights or add some framework on darker cardstock. Really, really like this. As of right now, I don't believe that you can buy the markers individually. I think you have to get the whole pack, which, I mean, I guess if you use them a lot and you're worried about, running out of one and replacing it, I could see how that maybe would be a little problematic. I like having open stock on markers and things like that, but I do get that they kind of just hit the market. Speaking of purchasing, let's talk about price point. So these are $24.99 for the 24 color set. So that puts them at just a smidge over $1 a piece. I think it's a great deal. I think that they work really, really well. And so I wouldn't have any issue, you know, purchasing them or using them for that amount of money. So I like to go in, you can see like I do all of my white first, and then I do all of my like my mid-tone, my main color first, and then back in, add the darkness, add the highlights. If you are a person who kind of struggles with losing your lines, you absolutely can go petal by petal. So you could put down your, you know, mid-tone, and then once that is dry, add in your shadows, add in your highlights. That's something that's absolutely an option. And if you are somebody who struggles with no line coloring, I would highly recommend that. Because we're coloring these, you know, as individual petals, I can kind of see where the line starts and ends based on the strokes, since the strokes are visible with this particular medium. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal, but if it is something that you struggle with, absolutely do it that way. It will make it easier. As you can see, as we're doing this, the white line that we originally stamped it in, that white pigment ink, has all but disappeared. You can't see it at all because these are opaque. I really, really like them. And I liked them for the stamped images. You know, this one here that, you know, that we're doing, and we're going to turn this into a card. There was, I did do one practice piece before I did this one, and I will show you that in its completed card form. The reason that I chose not to include the making of the card in the video is because that you can get it. Don't get me wrong, you can. But that particular embossing folder is part of a Craft Your Life kit or something along those lines. So you have to buy the whole kit in order to get the embossing folder. I didn't want that to be a thing. So instead I chose to use a different 3D embossing folder that you can just buy on its own, which is the Gentle Butterfly, which is hands down my favorite way to use these. So I'm doing this in the same way I would do any other 3D embossing folder. I spritzed the back. I'm going to put my black cardstock with the spritzed part down, run this through my embossing machine, and then I'm going to start coloring. I have looked far and wide and in between for a good way to color 3D embossing folders because I love them. I love the detail that they add. I love the texture that they have. And I have Copic colored them. I have watercolored them. I have color pencil colored them. And I have not found a way that I'm like, okay, I love the way this looks until right now. This is hands down, I am positive of it, the #1 way I will be coloring my 3D embossing folders from now on is with these acrylic markers, because it made it so easy to color the image. It has like that little bit of a rounded tip. It's totally opaque. Now, again, we're not going to get the same blends that we would with other mediums, but I don't mind it. And it's so easy to fix your mistake. You guys, like, you could absolutely do this on white, by the way. And I don't know, I would have to do a bit more experimenting to see, you know, how many layers of white it would take to cover up with a mistake. But I did mine on black. And let me tell you, any areas where I accidentally got paint that I didn't want it, I could just go in with that black marker and clean it up, and nobody would ever be any the wiser. It was wonderful. Very, very enjoyable kind of coloring, and I was thrilled with the way that they came out. So you can see, like with this one, I'm doing a little bit of blending of the colors to create a gradient, I guess, but it's not super blended. You can see where kind of that, what is it? I think it's rose dust, or maybe it's crimson. It might be crimson, where the crimson kind of blends into the rose dust, kind of blends into the pink pearl. But even if you get heavy-handed, like you can see here, I'm getting very heavy-handed bringing those lighter colors down. I can just go right over top of it. Here I wanted to add some purple on the wings. This is a me thing because I like all my projects to be matchy-matchy when I'm photographing them together. But I can go right over top of it with the pearl, or with the purple. Again, once it's dry, we have to make sure it's dry, because if you go in before it's dry, you will tear your paper. It's too much moisture for the cardstock to take, and it will tear it. But these dry so fast, it's almost not even like a thing. So once I had that down, I did go back in. I went in with the puffy heart to kind of blend these in together, the purple into the orangish reds. Again, this is my own doing because I want them to be matchy-matchy. The other thing that's really nice, because they are opaque, is if you try a color combination and you're like, wow, I really don't like that. I'm not a fan of this. You're not married to it. You don't have to stick with it. So like I tried the lighter purple with the medium purple, didn't love it. Going back in with the darker purple to the medium purple, liked that so much better. And because we're coloring the embossing folder and those parts that we colored white to begin with are inset, for the most part, I'm able to just skim along the top and keep those really white and not have any issues getting the color where I didn't want it. So these, I cannot say enough good things about them. In order to make the white a little bit more opaque, I did go back in. And again, because those particular colors or those particular areas are inset, I really didn't have too much issue coloring them separately from the colors and really helping that white kind of stand out. One of the things about coloring butterflies that is so fun is adding kind of the detail on their edges. So it's great to have a good way to do that. For his or hers, what are we? I don't know. For the butterflies body, I wanted to add in some black, but I needed the body to stand out. So I used a gray, which isn't really, I think it's called Cloudy Sky. I think it's supposed to be a blue, but it actually looks much more like a gray when you put it down. And then I am going to go in and do the leaves. Doing the darkest color in the inset portions, really kind of sketchy. I don't have to be careful at all because it's going to sit in the inset, and then the lighter areas will kind of like cover over the top of that. Anything that I need to work on, I can just go back in with my darker color and darken that up if I need to. Because you cannot get the same blends that you can get with other types of mediums, you do have to get a little creative with how you create dimension, which is okay. So most of the time I use like a 4-color blend of Copic markers. Or like a light, medium, dark at least. For these, because like this particular leaf is up front, I knew I wanted that leaf to be much lighter. And I did add my, little highlights. Look at how easy doing the little stems and stuff is. It's so easy. But anyway, so I did have to play around with not using all of the colors on all of the things in order to create dimension. So you'll see these 2 leaves that are up here and kind of in the front. I'm using the lightest color and the mid-tone to color those, whereas the ones that are pushed into the back, I am going to use mostly just the darker color. And then maybe like a little pop of the mid-tone here and there. So it will create some type of dimension with our coloring. But because it's a 3D embossing image, it's already got a ton of dimension because it's already textured. Like it's literally popping up off the page. So that, again, really was not overly concerning to me. You could certainly incorporate more greens and use darker greens into the background if you wanted. Same thing with this leaf that he's actually standing on. That one I just did in the lightest color so that it would pop forward from the darkest one in the background. Just some things that you have to think about differently with this particular type of medium. But game changer for me, coloring my 3D embossing folders, and I am thrilled about it because I do really like them, and Altenew has such great ones. They're one of the ones out there that doesn't just have like all over patterns. It has floral bouquets and like things like this, the butterfly. I mean, you have probably seen me color this butterfly in so many different ways because I love the embossing folder, but I've just never really found one that I was like, hands down, I love this for what the image, what the coloring does to the image, until this one right now. Plus, it's on black, totally brings the drama, and I'm here for that, honestly. I'm here for, well, I mean, not like bringing the drama like in my life, but in my cards, absolutely willing to bring the drama in my card making. So this one, pretty much just the greenery of the leaves. Here is where I'm going to go in with that black. I'm going to put his legs back in there. Same thing with his, like the little end part of his body. And then the one on the left is the one that is the embossing folder that you can only get in the kit. That one has some scroll work, which I did with the yellows and the browns. Was thrilled with the way that came out. And now we're going to turn these into cards. Yeah, really just, I know, I keep repeating myself, but they're great. I think they're a great investment, and you will be seeing more of them on my channel. I think they're wonderful. Plus, it's just nice to do it's nice to do something different. So for the sentiments here, I actually pulled the sentiments out of the Carnation set. I played around a little bit with the ones that, like the Striking Flowers, just didn't have a lot of options. And I looked at some of the other just plain sentiment sets I had from Altenew, and they were either too big or too small. So these ones worked really, really well for me. I'm stamping them in white pigment ink, and then I am going to heat emboss them in white detail embossing powder, and then I will trim them out. They don't have coordinating dies, so I'm just going to trim them out as best I can into labels. I struggle with, like, that one at the top. I love the sentiments. I love what they say. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. But I struggle with the ones where like one word is a different size than the other ones. So when I come across sentiments like that, I almost always trim them out separately. So like the your will be separate from the kindness, will be separate from the is contagious. Here I used my little paint pen to dab any white areas that I got embossing powder that I didn't want. It worked beautifully. In certain light, you can see like the one little dot that was necessary to cover it up. But for the most part, it blends pretty seamlessly into the black cardstock. So yet another use for this. I hope that they sell a pack that's just like the black and white one, because I think those will get the most use, at least in my craft stash. So once the sentiments were trimmed out into labels, I didn't really need to do anything else with the ones that were the 3D embossing folders. Those are basically done, and they just need a sentiment added on to them. I will be interested to know what you guys think. Do you think this is something that you would use? I know it's a little different than a lot of the craft products that are on that you see pretty often with card makers. But it's not that different for what you see artists using. Like, using paint markers is pretty common if you follow like any other art, like kind of art styles. Like I said, definitely is more graphic. It's not going to be as blended, but I don't care. I don't care at all. Yeah. So anywho, briefly, little bit of story time. Everybody is getting over their colds. Thank you, Lord Jesus. My oldest child is driving. Did your kids get recorders? Like, do they have recorders where you are in school and music class? I had a recorder when I was in elementary school as well. I abhorred it. I did not love it at all. It was awful. No, that was not for me. And now my child has one. And like before, we used to have to keep hold of ours. Like you just got one recorder in, I think it was like 3rd or 4th grade. And then you had that thing through 6th grade. Because when I was in elementary school, it was kindergarten through 6th. Now it's different. 6th grade is middle school, at least here. But he gets a new recorder every year, so we have multiple recorders that he just insists on playing. And while I do not want to poo-poo something my child is passionate about, I want to be loving and supportive, that thing is enough to drive you insane. Why? My husband said something to me the other day. He was like, why is our house always so loud? Like between the toddler's toys that are always playing music, or she's playing on her little like piano, or the older school-age child playing the recorder, or like there's just always so much noise happening. And I'm like, dude, we have kids. We have kids. Like, we chose to have children, so it's just loud in here all the time. But there are some times when you're like, whoo, can we get a break? Lord, have mercy on our souls. Can we get a break from all of the noise? I cannot be the only parent who feels that way. And particularly the recorder is just like next level. Like I'm not ready. Next level. It's a rough one. It's a rough one for this mom. Plus, I didn't even like it when I was a kid. So I feel like I don't know. I'm ingrained not to like things that make annoying sounds. I don't know. So here I have 2 different gemstone mixes. These are from Picket Fence Studios. One of them is Purple Side of the Rainbow. I always want to say Purple Side of the Moon, I think because of Dark Side of the Moon. If you're a music person, you'll get that. But it is, I think it's the Purple Side of the Rainbow. And then the other one is, I never remember it. And I use it a lot because I really like this one, Oceans of Green. And these just have a couple of different colors of purple, pinks, teals, greens in them. So they were already on my desk. They made really great sense for the color scheme that I had going on. So I added gemstones to all 3 of them. And then you can see these are the 3 completed cards. So, would recommend the acrylic markers. I hope that you check them out if you like this style or if you really like 3D embossing folders. I enjoyed using them immensely and I cannot wait to make more projects with them. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.